Welcome into First Take. What's up, everybody? Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman,
What's up?
Molly Karam.
What's up, Ma? How you
Pretty
doing?
excited for today's show.
All right?
I don't know about you guys. How are you guys feeling today? Feeling good?
Yeah, except I'm thinking about something that's going to happen later in the show, and the thought of you gloating about it does not sit well. But, yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about.
You're miserable about that. I'm miserable about how we have to start the show.
And that
Well,
makes
I'm
me happy.
and I'm full of positive energy, so that makes one of us with these angry New Yorkers. Coming up on today's show, these guys will give their top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and you do not want to miss their list a little bit later in the show. We'll get into it, but you know where we're starting. Timmy Tebow, Stephen A. A little Tebow time to get your morning started off right. In his first at-bat of his first instructional league game, Tebow crushed the first pitch he saw, a 91-mile-per-hour fastball to the opposite field for a home run, circling the bases with the quickness. Mr. Smith, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about Timmy getting the job done?
This is unbelievable. First of all, let's be very, very clear. I'm very disgusted.
Why?
Because I can't escape him. I mean, it's unbelievable. I could not believe that he hit a home run on his first pitch in the instructional league.
Can't
I was
make
like
this up.
I said, this cannot be happening. I said, it's right when I started my radio show. I was like, this cannot be happening to me. And everybody like, what happened? What happened? I like, he just hit a home run. I can't believe this is true. I cannot believe it. You know, he couldn't throw a football, all right? He probably can't throw a damn baseball. He looks too puffed, too buff to be playing baseball as far as I'm concerned. You know what I'm saying?
He does look a little fit. I'll give you that.
A little. Yeah, Popeye, really? I mean, come on now. I just thought about all of that.
Talking about future Hall of Famer right there.
And then I said, you know, if this boy this young man ends up really shining and elevating himself to the major leagues, it's going to be one of the greatest stories ever. But then he came back down to earth. Because, no, I'm not getting nervous.
A little nervous.
Mollywood, the man went 1 for 6.
Oh.
1 for 6 in the instructional league, okay? Now, that's only one game, his first, okay? Hadn't played baseball since high school. You know, it just really disgusts me because he's experiencing a level of privilege that most people don't get to experience. I have nothing against Tebow personally. I'm not mad at him for taking the opportunity. It makes sense. I'm just saying, my goodness, as much as I've been going off about how he didn't deserve the opportunity, could you imagine what I felt at that moment when the first pitch he saw was a home run? I said, this cannot be happening to me. It cannot be happening. But then he came back down to earth, so I'm okay now.
What has happened to my life that when I got the news, I read it on Twitter first, the first thing I thought about was Stephen A. Smith.
That's going to keep
What has happened to my life that you are the first image? His smiling face is the first image that flashed through my mind.
I would say that I do have that kind of effect.
Apparently.
It's all right. It's all right.
Now,
Gosh.
you said he can't throw a football. You neglected to mention he was able to throw a football for a pass for a touchdown against your Steelers in the playoffs.
A dead
clock is right twice a day. Really? Is he? Are we sure?
He is
Are we sure? Because you're in the instructional league?
You know what?
I mean, we don't know that.
The instructional league is where prospects go.
Yeah.
You have former major leaguers rehabbing injury, working on stuff. A guy wants to refine a skill, whatever. But there are prospects. The pitcher he hit it off of was a product of Vanderbilt, not some Division II.
You spoke at Vanderbilt. You're familiar
Not
with
some Division II
That's
team.
my second institution, my second home.
First pitch was a 90-plus mile an hour fastball. It's not like a guy who's never played since high school is a great enough athlete that he can take a 90-plus mile an hour fastball. Let me tell you my favorite stuff. Here's chronologically 1, 2, 3. He comes up to the plate. There you see it. His first pitch that he sees, by the way, you notice that the pitcher is a lefty.
We actually have highlights of that.
That's a lefty-lefty matchup. That's difficult against a prospect. And the first pitch he sees, he hits for a home run. That wasn't even the best part. It was the other way. He didn't try to pull that ball. He took it the other way for a home run. That's not the best part. You know what the best part was? He busted it out of the box. He busted it out of the box. So you mean to tell me you haven't played baseball since high school? You go to the instructional league where you face other prospects. It's like you're a prospect. Where you face prospects. you're a lefty. The first pitch you see is from a left-handed prospect. It's an over 90-mile-an-hour fastball, outside part of the plate, lefty. Your first swing, you take it the other way for a home run and bust it out of the box? And you want to dwell on the fact that he's 1 for 6?
Yeah, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, Stephen A.
I'm sorry, was 1 for 6 not a fact? I think it is. You know what? I'm going to leave this alone because I don't even want to talk about this no more. I'm so disgusted that this is even a subject. I will say this, though. He's got a great agent. He's got a great agent.
He's got a lot of athletic ability. Let me tell you something.
He's got a great agent because I cannot believe he got this opportunity. Yeah. It just amazes me.
That's the problem. No, see, Molly, that's the problem. He didn't want him to have the opportunity. Then he hits a home run. Yeah. So now what can you say? Is it a wasted opportunity? Is it an opportunity for nothing?
1 for 6.
Excuse me, before we go to break, what does your boy Jeff always say? Life isn't fair. Please say the quote, your favorite quote.
Fair is a place where they judge pigs.
Thank you.
Does not exist.
Thank you. We have another subject to get to.
Let's move on.
That was some pig.
Let's move on.
That's an award-winning pig.
Can we move on?
Yes.
Can we move on, please?
Let's move on to Tim's former sport, pro football. We have more information on Dez Bryant's injury. An MRI finally taken Wednesday revealed Bryant suffered a hairline fracture. I don't know how to pronounce this, of the right tibial plateau, I think it is, which is part of the knee joint at the top of the tibia. So according to the Dallas Morning News and confirmed by ESPN's Todd Archer, the delay in Bryant getting an MRI was because he was absent from Monday's required treatment for injured players and Tuesday's team meetings. He's supposed to be fine. The injury could sideline Bryant 0 to 3 weeks, and he won't need surgery, sources telling Adam Schefter and Ed Werder. Max, are the boys in trouble?
They are. But I first want to talk about Dez Bryant, who's unfairly maligned in the past for, like, rooting on his teammates and stuff like that. Has always seemed to me to be an excellent teammate, not just a great player, a great receiver, when he's on the field. And so his behavior in the past, which was unfairly, I think, characterized as a negative influence on the team, where I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to have an attitude like that on their team, you know, demonstrative but always in support of the team. I think you miss treatment, you miss a meeting, then the machine isn't working on a Wednesday, and there's always some issue. Sounds to me like he's avoiding a diagnosis. Now, why do you avoid a diagnosis if that diagnosis can keep you out for, let's say, 3 weeks? Because you want to get on the field. Dez Bryant seems to me to be the kind of guy who has drank the football Kool-Aid that says no matter what, get on the field. Yeah, but what if it's not good for your long-term health? What if it's not good for your career, et cetera? He's trying to get on the field. That's what it looks like to me, absorbing fines, because that's the best way to get it done at this point. And what that tells me is that he thinks this is bad, or you wouldn't avoid a diagnosis. And if Dez Bryant, if Mike, this is pure conjecture, but if that proves to be the case, then Stephen A. Smith, the Cowboys are left at receiver with Coleman and Beasley, and an aging Jason Witten. Okay, they have a great offensive line, although La'el Collins is going to be out for a couple weeks at least with a toe. So that offensive line is going to be something less than it should be, something less than it normally is. Ezekiel Elliott carried the ball 30 times. Look, he had his first excellent game after 2 bad ones. He had his first excellent game. He averaged under 5 yards a carry, like 4.7 yards a carry, but carried the ball 30 times. He's carrying the ball just about as much as anyone in the NFL. How much more can you rely on that guy? Your receiving core is substandard. Dak Prescott is the real deal, but the real deal is a rookie. You still assume at some point they're going to get tape on you. They're going to start to game plan for you. They're going to start to take away the things that you do well and force you to do things you're less comfortable with. He is still a rookie. Dallas still doesn't have a defense. The Cowboys are in trouble. All signs point to trouble, and I think to last place in the NFC East by the time this season's over.
Dak Prescott has completed 66.7% of his passes. He's completed 66 of 99 passes. 34 of them have gone to Cole Beasley and Jason Witten. So when I look at it from this perspective, it's not good not to have Dez Bryant in the lineup, but specifically when you have Romo. When you have Dak Prescott, because he's a rookie 4th-round pick, because they're being a relatively conservative in their approach with him and what have you, they're basically targeting the middle of the field. throwing in between the numbers. That's where he's completed a vast majority of his passes. So by virtue of that reality, I don't think Des Bryant is that devastating of a loss at this juncture. If Tony Romo was the quarterback, who likes to go deep, who can go deep, who doesn't mind throwing outside the numbers, being a gunslinger, taking charge or taking chances rather, then it would be different. It would be a devastating blow, even though Jason Witten was his favorite target and he always got the ball to Jason Witten. The fact of the matter is Cole Beasley has really, really emerged. He's a guy who took a lick last week against Chicago. I forgot who hit him. Oh, I mean, almost knocked him into tomorrow. That was a vicious hit. But he's tough as nails. He doesn't mind catching balls in the middle of the field. Him with Jason Witten and to a lesser degree Terrence Williams and his willingness, along with various other targets that they've utilized, they're throwing the ball in the middle of the field. And because they're not going outside the numbers, which is where Des can go up in solo coverage, or even when he's not open, he's still open because he's Des Bryant and he can find a way to make things happen. If Tony Romo were your quarterback, then you have a bigger concern because you know what Tony Romo likes to do, what he wants to do, what he's prone to do. But with Dak Prescott, following the game plan, being used in a conservative manner, not taking too many chances, throwing the ball in the middle of the field, short yardage situations, not to mention the fact that he's handing the ball off to Ezekiel Elliott or Alfred Morris while only getting sacked a few times, okay? If you look at it from that perspective, Des Bryant is not that big of a loss yet. Now, if you want to say he's a loss, you could say it from this perspective. He's a decoy. Because having him on the field 100% healthy forces you to spread your defense a little bit wider because you have to pay attention to him, monitor him, and you can't take for granted that you can leave him in single coverage and he's not going to go up there and get the football. So as a result, you can compromise yourself in that regard. But outside of that, that's the only argument you can make as far as I'm concerned to speak to Des Bryant's value right now. He's only had 11 receptions in the first 3 games. 11 receptions. He hasn't been that big of a factor because Tony Romo is not there yet. And I look at it from the standpoint, if you're Dak Prescott, you're going to miss him because there's always value in Des Bryant. But you're certainly not going to miss him as much as you would have, as much as Tony Romo would have missed him.
Here's the problem with what you're saying.
Yeah.
If Stephen A. Smith knows that's the game plan, you think, I'm looking at the schedule, okay, the 49ers, they could look good against the 49ers, but you think the Bengals, you think Marvin Lewis, you think the Eagles, you think Peterson and Schwartz, you think the Packers, they have a game, this season later on with the Steelers, you think Mike Tom, you think these head coaches and defensive coordinators don't know what the game plan is? And you mentioned Des Bryant as a decoy. You mentioned the fact that Des Bryant just being on the field poses a threat that maybe enables you to do some of the things you want to do. But now Des Bryant, if in fact he's not on the field, at least in those 3 weeks coming up, so you do have the Bengals and the Packers.
Got it.
If Des is not on the field and these coaches start to get tape and start to understand the game plan and start to take that away from the Cowboys, I mean, first of all, forget about passes in the middle of the field. Just shut down the running game, and you're going to beat the Cowboys.
Well, I know that you didn't intend for it to be a rhetorical question, but it came across that way, so I'm going to answer it anyway. Here's the deal. You brought up San Francisco. Does Stephen A. knows this. Do you think that Chip Kelly? Well, I don't consider Chip Kelly that bright because I think his ego
I actually skipped Chip. I actually skipped San Francisco.
So we're going to go down the list. Okay, so then you brought Cincinnati. Well, that's Marvin Lewis, allergic to playoff prosperity.
Are we in the playoffs?
We're not in the playoffs, but because he's allergic to prosperity in the playoffs, I think it's sifted down like a virus to the regular season. That's why they're 1-2 thus far, when they shouldn't be 1-2. So we got that. Green Bay, their defense hasn't been that impressive, and then there's a bye week. And oh, by the way, Des Bryant, they're saying he's out anywhere from day to day to 3 weeks. So you're talking about Green Bay being 3 weeks from now. So I would say to you, you're talking about San Francisco and Cincinnati, comparing them to my acumen. I don't mind that challenge because based on the way that they've looked, it's a challenge I'm willing to take, as ignorant as I may be.
Yeah, well, if the Cowboys don't have Des Bryant, and they obviously don't have Tony Romo, I'm telling you right now, they're going to lose to the Bengals. That game, they lose to the Bengals.
Well, I ain't saying...
The Niners, they got a shot. They lose to the Bengals, and they lose to the Packers. So, you start to look at the NFC East. The Giants gave that game away to Washington. Washington is a healthier team, at the very least, than the Cowboys, and the Eagles have been world beaters so far. Who are the Cowboys better than in the NFC East?
Well, listen.
Without Des.
Listen. Without Dez, you don't know the answer to that question. The Redskins are allergic to prosperity. The Giants find ways to disappoint you, whether it's giving up 21-9 leads or Eli throwing interceptions, or Odell Beckham Jr. or Odell Beckham Jr. having a contagion effect on the team, and as a result, it being something that affects them. And of course, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles. Look. The Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz deserves a lot of credit, but I think that's the only team that you can definitively say is better than the Cowboys in the NFC East at this juncture. I think that's the only team you can definitively say. I think the Giants and the Redskins are question marks. We need to wait and see about them.
You know what's amazing about you?
Sure.
I don't know which Stephen A. Smith. Matter of fact, I don't even have to argue with you. Stephen A. Smith should argue with Stephen A. Smith, because you started the season by saying you take the Cowboys in the NFC East.
Yes. Before Tony Romo got hurt, by the way.
No sooner is week one over that you are ranting and raving about how the Cowboys, if something will go wrong, something it will go wrong, those guys are done, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm telling you they're coming in last in the NFC East, and you're telling me no.
Because you have to understand.
You don't need to just argue with yourself.
I enjoy talking about the Cowboys in this respect. I enjoy reminding the world. I never, ever, ever predict the Cowboys are going to stink, they're going to prosper, they're going to. All I ever say is, when the moment arrives, no matter what, be patient, just wait. Whatever level of extreme misery is destined to come a team's way, it will hit the Cowboys. It could be with injuries that ruined their season like last year. It could be with the catch that wasn't a catch against Green Bay in the playoffs.
Wait, could you tell me that part again?
It could be the catch. I said
no, before. Injuries?
Yes.
It could be injuries that ruined their season like last year?
Allow me this.
Like what, like Romo and Dez?
I need you to listen.
Go ahead.
Because I know it's hard for you.
All right.
But I need you to listen.
Romo and Dez are hurt.
What I'm saying to you is, when it comes to the Cowboys, this is my lone position. Continuously, always. I have years and years of footage to validate my position. Whatever can go wrong will, at the most inopportune time that brings them the most pain. Last year was injuries that ruined their season after they were coming off a 12-4 season thinking they were going to do something special. And they got injured early and it just ruined everything. The year before that, they came out of nowhere, grabbed 12 wins, got to the playoffs, and a catch that wasn't a catch ruined their chance to get to the NFC Championship game. The year before that were 8-8 seasons. Whatever it is that can ruin something for them. That's who the Cowboys are. They cannot help it. They cannot escape it. It's a black cat running around the franchise like that. It's been that way for the last 20 years, and I must say, I absolutely love it.
Okay. You just witnessed that, right?
It tickles me.
I win.
Huh?
Right. This is the thing. You said, like last year, when injuries derailed their season early. Well, this year, the same thing happened. The difference is they found a good young quarterback, a really good young quarterback.
Right.
I like Dak Prescott's future.
Right.
I don't think the future is now, particularly without their only really good receiver.
We talk about what should happen. We talk about what could happen. We talk about we deem and deduce what may be best. But I'm telling you right now, the Cowboys are messing. Keep talking about Dak Prescott. How much you want to make a bet Tony Romo will ruin the season? How much you want to make a bet? Because that's what happens to the Cowboys. Keep talking about Ezekiel Elliott. Watch, he's going to fumble the ball. He's going to get hurt or something. Keep talking about Dez Bryant. This injury is going to end up lasting 6 weeks instead of 3. Whatever can go wrong with the Cowboys will happen. That's all I ever say. That's all I ever say. I never say anything else.
The question is, didn't you ask me, are the Cowboys in trouble?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm saying yes. What do you say?
And I said to you, no. You know why? Because nothing's changed. They always are.
They were always are.
They hoodwink you. They force you to take a stance. No, they can't help themselves. They will find
I didn't pick them to win the NFC East.
I know that. I understand.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Hold on, wait a minute. It's a mistake. I don't mind. I actually get joy from it. The Cowboys tanking, the Cowboys folding, the Cowboys suddenly losing. You think I'm going to be miserable over that? Please, let me eat my cheese doodles for crying out loud. Whatever
you should show people your breakfast.
By the way, can we show
your breakfast?
Stephen A. has been making great progress. He's dropped 12 pounds. I see him drinking these vegetable shakes all the time.
And now you got him, but that's him.
What do you got? What are you doing?
This is my vice, man.
For breakfast?
This is my vice.
What's the point?
It's not, you lost all this weight. You're in the gym. What are you doing?
This is like his Cowboys thing. He's a walking contradiction.
We're all allowed to cheat every now and then.
You just cheat every day.
Every now and then. Every now and then. It's just a little bit. It's just a little bit.
This is his Cowboys argument. You see? They're going to win the division, but they're going to ruin it. It's like, I'm going to have a vegetable shake. and a bag of Cheetos.
You
It's the same thing.
have not
And it
been
all
watching
equals
me
itself
about
out.
the Cowboys. I am not that way with anything else, but with the Cowboys, it does not matter to me, man. Whatever brings them the most misery brings me joy.
Well, you know, we can finally agree on something.
Yes, we will leave it there.
Rex, another thing you say a lot is you refer to yourself as an above-average coach, but you know you look at Bill Belichick's winning percentage against everybody else and against you, and it's higher against you. Can those two things make sense to you, that you're an above-average coach, but you know the record doesn't really say that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess that's the way it is. You know, you guys would know better than me.
Rex, your thoughts on Tyrod Taylor?
Above average quarterback. Go ahead, you guys. Just fill in the blanks, whatever you want to say. Above average quarterback.
Antonio Pierce is now with us. How are we doing? Formerly of my New York Football Giants.
Yeah, we got a lot of
Big
Giants
whoop.
in the
That's
house.
Yeah,
right.
we do.
Yes, we do.
New York's represented well.
Yes, yes, yes. But Stephen A., I want to start with you here. What does that sound you just heard say about Rex Ryan?
It says that he's weaker than what I thought. It's kind of hard for me to be on this show because I really like Rex. I love what he did when he first arrived in New York. But to be on year 6, where you've missed the playoffs, and you still talk as much as you talk, is bad enough. But then when you turn around and get ultra sensitive, when somebody brings up facts that contradict all the stuff you've bloviated about, and you get all sensitive, where that ultimately is your answer to every other question that follows, it shows me that you're mentally weak, that you can't take what you dish out. And it also shows me why your teams ain't making the playoffs. Because you're busy being friends and getting along and having players stand up and speak up on your behalf because they like you so much. Or in the case of the New York Jets, when your job was saved in your penultimate season, next to last season, for those that don't know what the word penultimate means. If you remember, he was inside that Jets locker room, and guys stood up and roared and cheered and damn near picked him up to carry him outside the locker room. But you hadn't made the playoffs. So they were celebrating how they kept you, and you didn't get fired when nobody took the time to recognize that the fact that the subject of your potential firing was invading the headlines spoke to the absence of productivity that you were doing. And so for me, it's like you turn around and you talk, but you don't back it up. You talk about winning, but you lose. You bloviate about what you're going to do, and you don't do it. Then you get called out on it, and you get sensitive about it. And on top of it all, you still ain't winning. And then on top, I forgot to add the fact that in the midst of all of that, you bring your brother on board, the epitome of nepotism, the pure definition of nepotism. You bring your brother on board to his defense, who once was the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, where they were ranked 4th defensively in yards allowed and points allowed. But the year and a half to 2 years that followed, you were dead last or second to last as a defensive coordinator, and you bring him on board talking about how he's a good coach. It doesn't make sense. And at some point in time, remember, I am the guy, Max, just so you know this. I've been on the record. Marvin Lewis needed to go years ago because you shouldn't have 12 years where you can't win a damn playoff game. How the hell am I going to talk about Marvin Lewis, who's been to the playoffs, by the way, the last 5 years, and not talk about Rex Ryan, who's missed the playoffs the last 5 years?
I think, and this is like others have said it, but I think Buddy Ryan gets carried off the field and everything. Rex has to be looking at that like, man, I hope that could happen for me one day. Like, my players love me.
Of course.
And he's gone overboard as a player's coach. And also, it turns into white noise, background noise. Maybe he's the kind of guy where at first he could give you a kick in the pants if you needed it and motivate you. But after a while, it's just the same old thing. Here's the bottom line. I listened to that whole phone press conference, okay? About 10 or 12 minutes, 10 or 12 minutes long. He caught feelings behind that question.
Yes.
I mean, they asked him point blank, Stephen A., as you mentioned, look, you said you're an above average coach, but you're worse than average against Belichick. How do you square that? And he couldn't square it. The next question, He also gave the answer, I guess, above average. It was, then he tried, then other people asked more kind of friendly questions. And the last question, I think it was about LeGarrette Blount. And the last thing he said, he brought it back to this. It was gone and over with. It was done. No one was thinking about it anymore. Above average. So it was still with him. Here's the bottom line. You have to be great at coaching to be an NFL head coach. I mean, you don't get there by accident. It's a very exclusive group. But then you're compared to your peers. So it's not just are you a great coach in a vacuum, it's are you a great coach by NFL standards. He is 55 and 60 lifetime as a head coach. You know what that is? A tick below average. So when you say you're above average as a coach and your record after 8 seasons says you're a tick below average and someone asks you about it, to catch those kind of feelings means you are thin-skinned, Antonio Pierce.
And that's tough. I mean, here's a guy who's been in New York, still in New York, the state of New York, I should say. And I always go back to Coach Coughlin, right? And here's a guy who every year mid-season was fired. Get him out the door. You know, actually take Eli with him, take Stray, take Antonio Pierce, take the whole crew with him.
I was yelling about it on New York radio at the time.
Get rid of those guys. And every morning he'll come in here and says, block out the noise. Tough skin, mentally tough, mentally tough, mentally tough. Be prepared in the fourth quarter. So when you're a coach, and I kind of make it's kind of laughable. I'm sure guys in the locker room, if they're getting wind of this, they're laughing about it. Because here's a guy, like you said, that's barking up a storm, and the bite is of a chihuahua.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what it is. And at the end of the day, and I think you both hit on it, we only can value you as a coach on your record. And when another man, another team or coach, like the Patriots, pretty much own you, they own you. Right? Since 2010, you haven't been to the playoffs. What is it, 4-11 against the Patriots? This is just, it doesn't match up. So, but here goes the funny part about it. Just, what was it, 2 days ago, you can make that phone call to Julian Edelman and say, hey, are you playing quarterback?
Yep.
And laugh and go throughout that whole thing. So to me, it's like, come on, man, you can't do this, right?
And it was an easy answer.
He can dish it, but he can't.
It was also,
comes across weak.
It was also an easy answer, by the way. Hey, you say you're above average, but Belichick's been whipping your butt worse than he's been whipping the rest of the league. All you got to say is, yeah, Belichick, whips everybody's butt. I guess he gives it to me worse. I mean, that's an easy answer.
I said this before when he's with the Jets. He makes it tough for a player when you're losing because he puts the pressure on you to win for your coach.
Well, that's where I was going, because I wanted you in for this segment because you play defense on an elite level. You've got a Super Bowl championship. I want to know, when I look at Rex Ryan, I see an 11-4 record against Bill Belichick. I see the New England Patriots continuously dominating the AFC East. Rex Ryan was with the Jets as a head coach. Now he's with the Bills as a head coach. The man can't say Bill Belichick just has a number. And I remember when Rex Ryan would throw jabs at Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick said, well, I like my record against him. That's more than Bill Belichick ever said, okay? But he made it a point to say that. I remember when Tom Coughlin beat the Jets near the tail end of a regular season a few years back, and everybody was talking about how, I don't know if it was a regular season or it was preseason, but it meant something to Tom Coughlin just because he beat Rex, because Rex talked so much.
Right.
So I ask you, as a defensive player in this game, so much is made about the relationship a coach like Rex Ryan is able to cultivate with his players. I think it's a primary reason why he should go, because it's ineffective, it's unproductive, and more importantly, it puts the players in a bad spot. What do you say to that?
So I'm going to just name the coordinators that I played for, just a few of them. Marvin Lewis, Greg Williams, Steve Spagnuolo. There was a fear factor with all those coaches. Even though, Steve Spagnuolo's about this tall.
Right.
There's a fear factor when that man walks in the room. Same thing with Marvin Lewis. There's a presence. Greg Williams. There was that fine line where you're my guys, but if you screw up, you're out, right? And I think as a player, when you don't have that fear factor from your either coordinator or your coach, and it's like, oh, hey, buddy, my bad. I'm sorry, Rex. And you can joke with him like that. You're just not as doubting. You're not as focused. You're not as laser sharp. Me and Coughlin didn't have jokes. It was black and white. It's football. This is our time. Now, if it was an event, his charity event or something like that, let's have a good time. But I think to answer your question as a defensive player, you would love to have that kind of bond with that guy, but you have to be productive. And if you're on a defense, obviously individually you got to do your job and get your stats and make your team look good. But then as a unit, the way he talks, you should be feared, like the Baltimore Ravens.
And Max,
the 85 Bears. But that's not the case.
Max Antonio, I got to tell you something. I've always been of the mindset that Rex Ryan is a great, great defensive coordinator masquerading as a head coach. I'm getting to the point where I'm wondering about him as a defensive coordinator simply because it's all so much predicated on his relationships as opposed to his schemes, as opposed to his talent evaluation, as opposed to his ability to get guys focused enough to be accountable for their job so they can perform at a high level. I hope I'm wrong because I'm really not rooting for the man to be fired, but I got to tell you something. There's no way in hell this man should be a head coach again. Not only has he been for the last 5+ years, Max, not only has he not made the playoffs, he hasn't even had a winning record.
A couple of things, though, about Rex real quick. I think the equity he got, number one, some guys, you smell it on him. It's like, yeah, that guy will make a good head coach. He gave that kind of, he projected that kind of image. Then he had early success, so that bought him time. The one thing in Rex Ryan's defense, if you're coaching exclusively in the AFC East, you're not, I mean, you know, you're in maybe with the greatest coach who ever lived. So, you know, you come in second place, you're doing better than most.
It's not about second place, it's about the fact that he doesn't even have winning records.
No, I know. I'm not saying that's not true.
That for me. It was the talent that he inherited on that defense, and they took a step back. That was concerning initially when he came in, and those players that he had, that defense was already solid, and I thought he'd take it another level.
Let's be clear. Doug Maroney, head coach, Buffalo Bills, they had 54 sacks in 2014. Rex Ryan comes there last year. They go from 54 to 21. And Mario Williams, former #1 overall pick, can't do much outside of going after the quarterback. You got this boy dropping back in the coverage in a hybrid 3-4. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. I don't want to hear any more excuses because there's a whole bunch of excuses out there. For Rex Ryan.
He's got to win.
Below average NFL coach. I mean, right? That's what you would say, a tick below average NFL coach.
That's what your record states.
Antonio, thanks for being with us. Always good to see you. Meanwhile, Nebraska senior linebacker Michael Rose-Ivey explained exactly why this country needs to have quite uncomfortable conversations about race relations. And that's why he, along with teammates Mohamed Barry and Deshaun Neal, took a knee during the playing of the national anthem prior to Saturday's game at Northwestern. Now, Nebraska Regent Hal Daub, who served 2 years in Korea during the Vietnam era, told the Journal-Star on Tuesday, quote, NU student athletes are not supposed to do things that create disparagement or negative implications. It's a free country. They don't have to play football for the university either. They know better, and they had better be kicked off the team. Well, there's that. And Daub later denied, saying that the players should be removed from the team in a phone call to the Journal-Star, but he stood by other comments on the players. Now, Nebraska University President Hank Bounds responded, saying this: I've served in the military. I understand love. And I understand love of country, of the flag, and I know that freedom is not free. I recognize that some are upset by what they saw on Saturday night. But let me be clear. The University of Nebraska will not restrict the First Amendment rights of any student or employee. Stephen A., want to start with you here. Your reaction.
Well, this guy, Hal Daub, the university regent, and the former mayor of Omaha, I might add, has a lot of damn nerves. And, you know, Michael Rose-Ivey, Deshaun Neal, Mohamed Barry, they are students exercising their First Amendment privileges. Now, we understand that there are people that would disagree with their position, and I respect that. My problem, since the day Colin Kaepernick started all of this and people reacted to it, is how folks are trying to change the narrative. If these guys just took a knee and were being disrespectful towards our flag, towards the national anthem, I would have a serious problem with it. I wouldn't like it at all. I would still respect their right to do it, but I would still have a serious problem with it. I wouldn't like it. Because I do think it would be a disservice and a level of disrespect aimed towards our military servicemen and women who represent our country so valiantly. But once the players come out and specifically and explicitly state that in no way are they pointing the finger or of ire or anything else towards our military men and women, that they were talking about racial injustices that have taken place in this country and still take place to this day, I am still at a loss as to the level of vitriol folks are aiming in their direction, using the military as an excuse. And when you got this guy, Hal Daub, who wants to sit up there and speak out against these kids, I thought his words were egregious. Let me read the quote that was in the Journal-Star in Nebraska, supposedly from Hal Daub. And I believe this reporter quoted him accurately, by the way. He says, quote, this is Hal Daub, "It's a free country. They don't have to play football for the university either. They know better, and they had better be kicked off the team. They won't take the risk to exhibit their free speech in a way that places their circumstances in jeopardy, so let them get out of uniform and do their protesting on somebody else's nickel." Really? First of all, if these were kids acting up, we put their faces up. Could y'all please put Hal Daub's face? Let's put that mugshot up on national television, even though he hasn't been arrested or anything like that. Let's put Hal Daub's face up in there. By the way, he's the former mayor of Omaha. Do you know how many callers called into my radio show yesterday, Max Kellerman, Molly, on Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio from Nebraska, talking about how this has really stirred stuff up? Because there have been some racial issues in Nebraska. Folks getting pulled over by the cops, folks, certain violence being exacted against African Americans, what have you. The former mayor of Omaha, who happens to be a regent member for Nebraska, Mr. Hal Daub, basically is saying, hey, you do stuff our way or else. Wait a minute. They're peaceful. They haven't interrupted the game. They haven't impeded anybody's ability to come to the game and watch the game and enjoy the game. They have sat quietly. And still, you're not just talking about disagreement, Max. He's talking about exacting action against them because they're not doing what he wants them to do. Hal Daub is the problem here, and he needs to be dealt with.
Real quick, I neglected to mention earlier, then he later denied that he ever made the
No, you mentioned it.
I did? Okay,
No, you mentioned it, and I'm telling you I don't believe it.
And by the way,
I'm telling you I don't believe it.
Hank Bounds, the university president, I served in the military, I understand love of country. You quoted that whole thing. Let me be clear. The University of Nebraska will not restrict the First Amendment rights of any student or employee. So the university president deserves kudos.
Yes,
he does.
What's going on here is a cultural referendum, which is happening in this election even, about what kind of country we want to live in and maybe even what kind of country we now live in. What is the kind of dominant culture in our country? Because we're in a period of transition.
Yeah.
And this has happened along to various people in the media, or the media has covered this happening to various people in popular culture, in the political realm, who have voiced an opinion that not too long ago was dominant culture, reflected the views of dominant culture and what was considered proper for public discourse. And we're taken aback by the reaction because of social media and the democratizing effect it's had, and has given voice to a lot of people who felt differently, to an emerging kind of dominant culture that doesn't feel the way the old-timers felt. And they've been taken aback, like, whoa, I thought what I said was how everyone, oh, really? That's not okay anymore? I'm now reflecting a minority viewpoint, essentially? Yeah, because this is not just breaking down along racial lines. This is largely also a generational conflict. It's not just, white people as a it's old white people as reflecting largely this point of view. And it's not just racial either. There are older black people and younger white people who feel vice versa, but generally speaking. And I've heard those say, voices I respect in the media even, look, all this protesting, you should have seen in the 60s when it was really bad. What are these kids protesting about? Well, I would answer that, in fact, the nature of the protests have changed. You harped on the fact correctly that these are peaceful, respectful protests. These are not 60s style protests. These are protests where the protesters are going out of their way to empathize with the other point of view, where they're going out of their way to be respectful of the opinions and feelings, especially, which is a lot of what this stuff is about. People get their feelings worked up. The feelings of people who want to maintain the status quo, which has been unfair for a long time. So I think that's what's happening in a larger sense across the country. I think these student athletes deserve a lot of respect, and they are praiseworthy, as I believe the university president is praiseworthy for siding with them over the regent who not too long ago would have been voicing dominant culture perspective and would have likely been supported by the university, if not this university president.
Those interesting words that you threw out there, dominant cultural perspective. You know, I remember, even though I was born in 1967, we all know the uproar that the Vietnam War caused. We also saw an individual by the name of Muhammad Ali willing to speak out and speak up against, you know, our involvement in that whole ordeal. If I remember correctly, we saw a lot of American citizens, both black and white, literally against the war. A lot of white folks burning the American flag, if I remember correctly, okay? And then we also saw that Muhammad Ali was being victimized, only to later on celebrate and revere him. Unfortunately, it was after the Parkinson's had kicked in and he wasn't able to speak up for himself in a lot of ways. It was almost, there were times, I know that people don't realize this, but there were a lot of black folks I have run across, a lot of people from my community that had a problem with how much Ali was celebrated in the aftermath of his inability to communicate verbally, because it was almost like folks were just putting him out there. And even though they were saying that they were praising him, they wanted him to be seen out there a bit incapacitated to some degree. I'm just telling you.
I think the tide changed before he was incapacitated.
Okay.
The tide started changing in the 70s.
The tide started changing, but I'm talking about the way he was revered and ultimately celebrated. It was thereafter. And so a lot of times we find ourselves in this nation being celebrated, honored, respected for things after all the vitriol has long passed, but it doesn't gloss over the vitriol you experienced at the time that you were enduring.
You bring up Ali? I think that's right. You bring up Ali. If you're looking for praise and glory in your lifetime, frequently, you ain't going to get it.
Right.
But you bring up Ali. You know why Ali was revered to the extent that he was? And sure, the war became unpopular, and that was part of it, because there was a recognition early on that this man was sacrificing a lot on principle, that the climate wasn't just right for him to take that stand, and yet he took it anyway. And I think the reason that Kaepernick continues to resonate, and this has caught on, is because there's a recognition Kaepernick was a borderline player at the point he took this stance. He really risked being ostracized and being blacklisted, for lack of a better word, by the league when he did this.
Right.
Now it does not require the same kind of courage by these other athletes to follow his lead. He led.
That's fair and that's accurate, but when you bring up Muhammad Ali, trust me, he's somebody that I've revered and idolized all my life, along with a lot of African Americans. But you have to understand, in the eyes of a lot of African Americans, the reverence, the deference, the respect, and beyond for the sacrifices that he was willing to make in our eyes came from other communities afterwards. We always had it for him.
Sure.
We always had it for him.
I mean, like,
but it came from other.
Look what was written about Martin Luther King by some, and now there's a Martin Luther King Day in this country.
So the Hal Dobbs of the world, to get back to Nebraska, is emblematic of a time we were supposed to have graduated from. And we clearly have not fully.
Well, I just want to say this really quickly. There's also, take away any kind of sense that maybe it's coming from a bad place in Dobb, right? There's also, it requires a certain level of mental sophistication to understand what freedom in fact means, and why, in a certain way, you honor the flag when you take the knee because you're protesting issue.
And I think there are those case, but not now.
Well,
it doesn't take that much mental sophistication now.
I think it does, and I think maybe it's coming from a bad place in some people, or maybe they're simply not sophisticated enough to understand the nuance. I think we have to consider that too.
So in other words, we want to use that as an excuse. So you're not really a bad.
No, but they're ignorant.
It's a description.
What I'm saying is, you're not a bad, evil person or no good. SOB.
You might not just be smart enough.
You just might not be smart.
You might not
really?
be. Yep.
Really? That's where we're going? I mean,
yep.
Because if that's a defense, understand what you've just done. What you have just done is given a vast majority of Americans.
No, he's taking a shot at him.
No, I'm not saying that you're doing it in a way to absolve him of everything.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying by saying what you said, us as black folks can't sit back and look at you and go like this. You have iniquities. You have viciousness in your heart. No, you just might.
No, what you can say is this, Stephen A. Let me be very clear.
Really?
What you can say, as black folks, we can sit back and say, well, you could sit back and say, are you bad or just stupid? You could say that.
Okay. All right. All right.
We'll leave it there.
know this Max coming. I don't know you right now.
I get it. He's famous. Literally. What have you done with Stephen A. Smith?
Your boys can't come over your house.
I'd like to lick the tears off their faces like
God.
Scott Hennerman.
Damn.
People blowing me up on Twitter.
It's the truth. Period.
Me.
And last point is this.
That's a blunt.
Stay off the weed.
USA Today's For the Win came out with their weekly quarterback rankings after week 3. Now, for these power rankings, the list is based entirely on 2016 results. They might surprise you just a little bit. So here's how it is, folks. Take a look at number 1. It's Matty Ice from Hotlanta, followed by the man who just signed a contract extension. That would be one Drew Brees. Rounding out the top 3, it's Phillip Rivers. Eli Manning comes in at number 4. Cam Newton is 5. Max, I want to start with you here. Can you take this over, please? Who are your top 5 quarterbacks this season at the moment, my friend?
First of all, it pains me to say I can't put Eli Manning there. Leverage matters, and though he's played very well this year, you throw the pick that loses the game to go 2-1 in the division. You lose that game in the division, and now you're going to Minnesota. I can't put you in the top 5. Cam Newton hasn't been great this year, though he's faced some great defenses. Based on what they have and how they've done, you want me to start at 5 or 1? Want me to go 5 to 1 or 1 to 5?
What you want to do?
Start at
5 to 1.
Start at 5.
Honorable
Tell
mention.
him what to do.
Honorable mention, Matthew Stafford, but I can't put him in the top 5. Phillip Rivers at 5 with no Keenan Allen. He's still balling. 4, Carson Wentz. I don't care about the QBR and all that, although it's solid. You can see this guy can play.
Oh, no.
Andrew Luck, 3. He's been doing it by himself. Yeah, that's right. 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, over 300 yards a game by himself. No offensive line, no running back, not elite receivers. He's doing it, no defense.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers, if you take the Minnesota game out, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 12 for 18 with 4 TDs and no interceptions on 3rd down, almost 10 yards, 9.1 yards an attempt. And finally, number 1, Matt Ryan has been great this year. Matt Ryan's been great this year, just outplayed Drew Brees at New Orleans and so far has been the best quarterback in the league in 2016.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that. I get where you're coming from, but I got a different list. I'm going to start from 1 to 5. Number 1 on my list would happen to be Matt Ryan.
Okay.
Who's the player of the month right now.
You agree there?
I just think that he's been balling, and he has shown up. He's completing about 70% of his passes. He's making things happen. I give him credit for that. I'm going to go with Carson Wentz at number 2. I'm going to go with him at number 2 because he doesn't have a single interception. All right, he's thrown 5 touchdowns passes. He's completed nearly 65% of his passes, and the Eagles are undefeated. And when you consider what we saw from them last year, I got to give credit where credit is due. I got to give love to Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's got over 900 yards passing. He's only got 2 interceptions on the season, about 7 touchdowns, if I remember correctly. He's completing over 60% of his passes. He's reemerged after the bevy of injuries he suffered from. You know I can't have a top 5 without the bad man that he is. Aaron Rodgers, because he's Aaron Rodgers. Now, even though he hasn't been quote-unquote stellar, I got to look at him and what I'm seeing from him this year thus far, completing 65% of his passes. I'm sorry, 58% of his passes. Not that great, not that impressive, but he has thrown 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception. Tells me that guys ain't getting hope and that he's not having much help, but they're still 2-1 and on the come-up. He's Aaron Rodgers. Momentum, something to say about that. And last on my top 5, it ain't Dak Prescott, even though he's completed 66.7% of his passes, even though the Dallas Cowboys are 2-1. All of those things being considered, I got to give some love to Sam Bradford for Minnesota. Sam Bradford arrives in Minnesota. They're undefeated in the 2 games that he has played. And when you look at him and what he's bringing to the table right now, I got to give love where love is due. The Minnesota Vikings might be the team to beat in the NFC, and he's showing him connecting with Stephon Diggs. They've become a deep threat weapon. Obviously, not having Adrian Peterson, they still managed to go in Carolina and beat them. I just look at it and I say, you know what? I can't sneeze on Sam Bradford. I got to give some love to him.
But
I give it to Dak Prescott.
What I think happens when these quarterback lists at this point in the season is they're either on teams with really good defenses because they're winning, and so they're undefeated, like Sam Bradford, who deserves praise. I wouldn't put him in the top 5, but who are the 2 elite defenses? Which teams are the 2 elite defenses in the league? The Broncos and obviously Minnesota. And by the way, you actually have to say Philadelphia, too, at this point after what they just did to the Steelers. So those kind of quarterbacks we like because they win. And then quarterbacks with really bad defenses and really bad offensive lines who ball anyway get a lot of respect, like Andrew Luck. Like at times Aaron Rodgers this year, what Green Bay hasn't played up to their potential. I mean, that's the only stain against Aaron Rodgers, that Minnesota game.
Well, let's look at it this way. Got you. But let's go back to Sam Bradford. In 2 games, he's 2-0. He's completed 67.8% of his passes for nearly 500 yards. And he has got 3 touchdowns, not a single turnover, and the games were against Green Bay and Carolina.
Yep.
Can't ignore that.
Yeah, I mean, so far on that team, I think Mike Zimmer is the MVP, but...
So the only real difference that you guys had was the Sam Bradford Rivers, and then your orders were a little moved around. But completely different.
We have 4 of the
than
same
list.
5 guys. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Rivers is nice. It's just that I'm never down on Rivers. I'm down on San Diego.
Yep.
I think they find a way to get in their own way, and I don't think they're reliable when it counts. I think they will. They're Dallas Cowboys West. They will find a way to let you down.
I'm surprised though you didn't have Dak. He was low on the list, but where would you have put him?
Probably 7 or 8
So he'd
so
still
far this
be
year.
in the top 10.
Yeah, I'd put him in the top. I think his play necessitates you have to put him there. And part of this, it's unfair. It's just kind of eyeball test. I watched Carson Wentz, and I think it's the Steelers game. The eyeball test. It's the Steelers game. He did that to the Steelers, so that Dak doesn't have a performance like that against a team like that yet.
Okay.
Stephen A., where would you have him? Would Dak be in your top 10?
6.
6. All right.
At number 6.
Stafford, I'd have Stafford 6. If you
I would not have Stafford ahead of Dak Prescott.
Oh, Stafford has played extremely well this
I guess I'm biased against him. I need to see more.
All right. We will.
I don't trust him.
Coming up next, we go to college football. It's the biggest matchup of the weekend when Heisman frontrunner Lamar Jackson travels to face Deshaun Watson. But who has the bigger game on Saturday? These two are so good. The guys will debate it next.
Hi, I'm Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, and the people of Jamaica love and watch for a steak.
And just 2 touchdowns. Who has the bigger game on Saturday, Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson? Max Kellerman.
This is the best sporting event coming up this weekend, period. Even with the entire NFL slate, this is the best sporting event. Coming into the season, Deshaun Watson, we were ready, obviously there are other candidates, McCaffrey and other guys, but Watson was the guy, the quarterback, who we presumed would be better with the experience, who just gave Alabama a real run for their money in the championship game. And now he comes into the season with that kind of an experience, and you'd assume a more experienced and therefore better team. The Heisman Trophy is kind of his to lose. But Lamar Jackson, what he has done this year so far, Stephen A., it's not just the 25 touchdowns through 4 games that he's responsible for. It's that he put it on FSU. I told you before the season started, you look at the October 29th game between Clemson and FSU is going to determine the national championship. Now I'm here to tell you on September 29th that this game, Louisville and Clemson, is going to, at the very least, determine who the national championship is going to have to go through, even if that is Alabama or someone else. It's going to have to go through the winner.
Someone else.
Alabama. It's going to have to go through the winner of this game.
It's going to have to go through Alabama.
Now, you look at the Louisville defense and what they did to Florida State. Shut them down. When you turn Louisville into like a Syracuse or someone like who you're whooping up on, what happens when you play a real team? They had to come back on Ole Miss, yes. So did Alabama. I mean, FSU had to come back on Ole Miss. So did Alabama. They had nothing at all for Louisville. Louisville's defense is playing. They just scored 59 points this last weekend against Marshall. That was their lowest point output of the season. You hear what I just said? And they played Florida State. 59 points is their lowest point output of the season. Now you say, well, yeah, Lamar Jackson's doing a lot of it with his legs. That's true. Let's talk about passing through, through the air. What's he doing? 13 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. Well, what's Deshaun Watson doing? 9 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. Through the air, Lamar Jackson has been better. Overall, there's no comparison. If you ask me who the best player in college football is going into the season, Deshaun Watson. At this moment, it's Lamar Jackson by so far. He's lapping the field. And his team as an overall unit, both sides of the ball, is clearly and by far the #1 team in the country. They will win this game. Lamar Jackson will be the game's best performer.
That's nice. Beautiful soliloquy. I'm rolling with Deshaun Watson. You know why? Because unlike Lamar Jackson, who I've yet to see go up against stiff competition, because remember, I was never sold on Florida State. Don't forget that. I never was sold on Florida State. Before Florida State lost to Louisville, I predicted Louisville would beat them. I said their defense was relatively soft.
They lost the safety.
Particularly when Derwin James ended up going out. I said, I'm not giving them any shot at all. They will lose this game. While you bloviate about Lamar Jackson, and you talked about his stats, and you accurately highlighted how the 59 points was their lowest offensive output for this season thus far in a four-game winning streak. They're 4-0 in the season. Max Kellerman, leave it to me to add to those facts. Who were their opponents? Charlotte. Okay, I mean,
I like
Charlotte.
how you say that with your New York
Charlotte.
accent.
I mean, I'm thinking Charlotte, the city. Charlotte's been through a lot, but I'm thinking Charlotte, or I'm thinking the Charlotte Hornets, or I'm thinking Carolina Panthers, who are based out of Charlotte, but the University of Charlotte. Okay, if you insist. All right, fine. So they dropped 70 against them. The next game.
70.
The next game. You know what? I'll give Syracuse praise for.
Okay.
They made an excellent choice in their new athletic director, who's our former boss here, Mr. John Wildhack, who I love and miss dearly. Love you, buddy. Okay, we got a John Wildhack. That's about the only thing good about Syracuse right now. I mean, I got to go up there and see Boeheim because I know he can coach, and I think that the Syracuse Orange men, you understand, they can play. But the bottom line is they got a damn good athletic director who's a good man. Okay, that's about all you can say about Syracuse. Okay, we got Florida State here. All right. They were number 2 in the nation at the time. But again, I'm reminding you, I've never been high on
Did Alabama, are you high on Alabama?
Oh, yes, I am.
Did they have to come back on Ole Miss?
Sure.
So did FSU.
Sure. Let me finish. I don't care about that. They're the number 1 ranked team in the nation. They are the reigning, defending world champions, national champions, rather. And on top of it all, they're getting everybody's best shot. Watch your mouth. The fact of the matter is,
Louisville didn't get their best shot?
They're Alabama, okay? They're Alabama.
You can say it louder. I get it.
No. The emphasis. Now, we got Deshaun Watson. Why did Deshaun Watson come into this season as a leading candidate for the Heisman? You know why? Because of how sensational he was last year and how sensational he was in that national championship game.
Yes, he was.
I am saying to you that Lamar Jackson, I believe he is a stud. I believe he can play. But I think Ben Bolwell will be assigned to spy on him all night long. They're going to force him. They're going to force.
James Bond is assigned to spy on him. It's not going to make a difference.
They're going to force Lamar Jackson to give up the ball in that read option. He's going to have to give the ball to Radcliffe, and Radcliffe's going to have to beat you with the running game. They ain't going to let him do it. And Deshaun Watson will show up. He will show up. And I believe that he will have a bigger game. This will be his coming out party for the 2016 season.
You mentioned Louisville's competition.
Sure.
That they are just smoking, including Florida State. What you haven't mentioned was Clemson's competition. Troy, a powerhouse, major powerhouse school, right?
Not the men of Troy.
At Clemson. At Clemson. In the fourth quarter, Troy had a chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter. The refs blew a running play dead, a goal line play dead. That was a very close play where the ball was fumbled and Troy's heading the other way. They're about to score and take the lead in the fourth quarter at Clemson.
Right.
So when you talk about Louisville, who are they smoking? I'm going to discount FSU, even though they did the same thing against Ole Miss that Alabama had to do, which was come back and beat them. I'm just going to discount them anyway, the number 2 school preseason.
Right.
But look at the other teams, Charlotte and Syracuse and Marshall. And what about Troy? Because unlike Louisville, that is just doing outrageous things that children shouldn't be allowed to watch.
But you're
these
giving
other
me one game.
programs. Clemson is life and death with these programs.
You're giving me one game. I gave you 3. They did play Auburn. They did play Georgia Tech on their schedule already. So I'm looking at you giving me one game. I gave you 3. I'm telling you right now, all I'm saying is I'm not denying the fact that Lamar Jackson is a stud. He's my leading candidate for the Heisman based on how he's performed. He deserves that credit. But we're talking about who do we think will have the better game? And I'm saying on the big stage, I have seen what Deshaun Watson could do. I have not seen what
So that means he can't do it?
No, I'm not.
Because you
saying
haven't seen that means he can't do it?
I'm saying that I have to see it to believe it.
Okay, I've seen it.
Hold on, wait a minute.
I've seen it.
But we're not doubting that he could do it. What we're saying is, can he do it better than Deshaun Watson on this stage?
Yeah, well,
that's the question.
Yes, it is.
We're not questioning whether or not Lamar Jackson can do it. I'm saying comparing him to Deshaun Watson in a heads-up matchup. Yeah. I'm rolling with Deshaun Watson.
I'm rolling with a guy who has 25 touchdowns through 4 games.
Got it.
Why didn't we do college football eliminator picks so I could beat you guys in that too? Hopefully take your money.
Wait, so who's going to win?
Something. You got to win something.
Oh.
Who's going to win, Molly?
Clemson.
Who asked you, Molly?
See you on Monday. All right, tune in 8 p.m. on ABC this Saturday. I'll be paying very close attention, Max Kellerman. So you just heard the guys. Max is rolling with Lamar Jackson, his guy this weekend. Stephen A. is going with Deshaun Watson. Who do you think will have the bigger game? Go on Twitter. Cast your vote. We'll share those in a little bit. Meanwhile, to the association, Doc Rivers says there's zero gap between the Clippers and the loaded Warriors. Now Paul Pierce is saying there is a super team in L.A.? The Clippers. Do they need to stop talking? Find out next.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
They call him the truth, but some think Paul Pierce calling his Clippers a super team. That would be false. Pierce told the media this week he believes L.A. belongs in the NBA super team club. Quote, to me, I think we have a super team here. You look at Chris Paul, who's been first team All-NBA. Blake Griffin, first team. DeAndre Jordan, currently first team All-NBA. I mean, how many teams can currently say that? You have the best three-point shooter in the NBA, J.J. Redick. You have the sixth man of the year, Jamal Crawford. I mean, why is that not a super team? What defines a super team? When you look at those stats and you hear what I'm saying, this could very well easily be what's considered a super team, folks. Doc Rivers also chimed in earlier in the week. He said there's no gap between the Clippers and the Warriors. Max, I want to start with you, Mr. L.A. over here. Should the Clippers...
Hey.
You spent
I was there for 5.5 years, and I enjoyed my time there very much. I sure did.
And Marcellus,
I'm jealous.
no one reps the Clippers harder than your boy Marcellus.
That's
true. So we
true.
know you're aficionado here. Should the Clippers just stop talking?
Of course. Super team. First of all, I want to start on the franchise. Stephen A. usually go in on the franchise when you have a little beef. The Clippers, you remember when Mount Rushmores were a big thing a couple years ago? Everyone, who's on your Mount Rushmore? The reason Mount Rushmores were interesting is because you have to choose 4. So it's really a process of editing. It's an editing exercise. Who are you going to leave off? Like with the Lakers, Shaq, Kobe, Magic, Kareem, Wilt, Jerry West. Forget about guys like James Worthy or Pau Gasol. Forget about it. So you have to edit, like, who are you going to leave off? The Clippers have the opposite problem. Mount Rushmore, who do you put on? Can you even fill up 4 spaces on the Clippers? Their history is ridiculous. So if you come from a franchise who most of their history has been a league-wide joke, and suddenly you got respectable, and even better than that, you got good. You're a Western Conference powerhouse. That's not a small thing. But understand, even in this, which is unquestionably and by so far the Clippers' golden era, they have yet to win 2 playoff games in the same postseason, ever. They've never been
to
series. They've sorry, I said games. Series.
It's like the Cowboys.
They've never been to a conference finals in their history. If you're experiencing your golden era and you've never been out of the second round of the playoffs, should you be talking about super team when the back-to-back Western Conference champions just added Kevin Durant? Super team? You're setting yourself up for failure. There was a window a couple years ago where if the Clippers would have at least made a Western Conference Finals, you could say we're moving in the right direction. And they choked it away against the Rockets, and they blew it again, largely because of injury, but also they didn't get it done this past season, and their window is now closed. There is a team with far superior firepower, better experienced, and respects to Doc Rivers, but based on recent past, Steve Kerr's outcoached him. I mean, let's just say what it is. So in no respect are the Clippers better than Golden State. And to call themselves, for Paul Pierce, who's been on a great team, a championship team, and is among the all-time greats, to call this a super team is to set them up for disappointment because, you know, let's see them make a conference finals first. They're certainly not getting out of the West.
It's a couple of things. Number one, I have no problem whatsoever with the Clippers talking, so long as it's not Paul Pierce. The reason why is because, in case y'all haven't noticed, Paul Pierce was on ESPN and ABC during the NBA Finals. I think he did a fabulous job, and I'm going to throw an idea out for the honchos here right now. Get KG, who's retiring, put in with Paul Pierce. Lord have mercy, whoever you add to the NBA show, it'll be special. All of them, Jalen, everybody.
How many Celtics you want on one show?
I'm just saying, the two of them will be just fine. Rondo did a hell of a job, though, but he's playing Chicago, though. But he did a hell of a job.
Celtics fan all of a sudden?
No. I'm just telling you what they did on television. I'm not talking basketball.
They might be great. Can we mix some other teams in there?
I'm just saying, Paul Pierce did a hell of a job, and him and KG together, because KG would be good on television. I'm telling you right now, but that's a subject for another day. Here's the point that I'm trying to make to you. I don't want Paul Pierce talking because I don't want him to ruin his credibility by saying the nonsense that he said. Because you see, the Los Angeles Clippers are no powerhouse. They are no super team. Because not only have they not won a championship, one could argue they've underperformed. Now, you could look at injuries at inopportune times to a Chris Paul or to a Blake Griffin, or you could look to the free throw shooting of DeAndre Jordan, who hit 43% for the free throw line last year, and that was actually an improvement, okay? I do not believe that Doc Rivers got outcoached by Steve Kerr, even though Steve Kerr has proven to be a hell of a coach and is worthy of our respect. But let's understand something here. When we look at the Los Angeles Clippers, what's wrong with them talking? You tried everything else, nothing else has worked. Maybe if you talked yourself up into a tizzy, you'd finally feel compelled to live up to it, and as a result, produce. And so this is what it comes down to. Let's also keep in mind that although the Golden State Warriors are favorites, and should be, and how I'm so disgusted that the second best player on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, and Kevin Durant, chooses to go to a 73-win team, fresh over 2 straight trips to the finals, is disgusted as I am about that. Let me also say this. Styles do make matchups just like styles make fights. If Blake Griffin shows up and be the superstar that he's capable of being, but has yet to be, if he elevates his game, you now force them to deal with you instead of you having to adapt and deal with them. If him and Deion, because listen, I'm leaving Chris Paul out of this conversation. Chris Paul, to me, is arguably the best point guard in the game.
What?
Chris Paul, what did I say? I'm talking about floor generalship.
Oh, no.
Listen, let me explain. Steph Curry, if you're talking about somebody who can shoot the basketball as well, Steph Curry's on another planet because he's the greatest shooter I've ever seen.
Who's better, Steph Curry or Chris Paul?
Steph Curry because he's a shooter. Okay. But what I'm saying is, when I say point guard.
Pure point guard.
Pure point guard.
Yes, Chris Paul is the best pure point guard.
I can't tell you how many times I've had to argue with people. What I'm talking about is a pure point guard. You're miniature, you're a floor general, but there's so much that your physicality would like.
If a coach could draw up the way they wish their point guard could play, they would draw up Chris Paul.
It's Chris Paul. It's Chris Paul. So I'm saying to you, no matter what Steph Curry's going to do, Chris Paul step on the floor with him, Chris Paul gonna get his. You can book that, okay? It's the other guys that must step up. I'm gonna put my boy, Jay Boogie on the clock here too. I call him And1. That's my nickname for him because this brother could put stuff in the park to another level. Jamal Crawford is special, but I need him to be special this year. But we need to look at Blake Griffin and say, can we see that superstar that we know you can be? Because that is what it's going to require.
Maybe Chris Paul has something to do with that, Stephen A. Smith.
I don't think so.
Look, here's the interesting thing I agree with you. The way the game especially used to be played, Chris Paul in certain respects is the most perfect point guard I've ever seen. Right? He does what do you want your point guard to do? That's the way he plays the game. It's like an idealized version.
Isaiah-like.
Sort of, right. But in this NBA, when you actually think about what you like your point guard to do, and you look at Steph Curry, the one issue with Chris Paul is the ball sticks with him. The ball sticks with Chris Paul. He has a lot of assists and everything, but he kind of monopolizes an offense because he is so great. Steph Curry, the ball doesn't stick with him, Stephen A. Whether he's on or off the ball moves.
You know what?
It does.
Let me tell you what. But let me tell
More
you
than with Chris Paul.
Let me say to you why that's not fair. And let me tell you why that's not fair. Because even though you say point guard, you get past half court, and all the Warriors are doing is pass the ball, set pick, so him or Clay can shoot.
Sure.
All right, and occasionally
Draymond
Durant. Green, and now you got Durant. That's not really running a team. Okay. The obligation that Steph Curry has with the ball in his hands is nothing compared
Does it work?
to Chris Paul. No. It works because him and Klay Thompson in concert is the best
That's what
shooting
okay.
backcourt
So
we've
now,
ever seen.
so now,
Chris Paul has to run a team.
So now we're getting to my point.
Run
Actually,
it.
the way the Warriors play is more efficient. And when you look, I'm not saying just stack up the talent, because as I said yesterday, if you take Kevin Durant off the team, which he's on it now, folks, but if you took him off the team like last year and you just stacked up the talent, it's comparable. But the form that the talent is in for the Warriors and the way they're able to play and space the floor is a more efficient way of playing than the way the Clippers play. And now you add Durant. It's a wrap. Doesn't matter what Blake does.
But wait a minute. You're talking about it's more efficient. They have a system with personnel that allows you to play outside in. The Clippers play inside out.
Right.
So in other words, you got to throw the ball into Blake, even when he steps out.
So you're counting by 2 instead of 3. You're going to lose.
But what I'm saying is but you can force them to play your style if DeAndre could hit shots.
But he ain't going to go from 43% to 75% in 1 year.
If Blake Griffin has to step up and be so dominant that it forces you to acquiesce to their style of play.
Yes, if Blake Griffin if Blake Griffin wakes up tomorrow and he's LeBron James for some reason, then yes, the Clippers have a shot.
Listen, don't be simplistic like that.
That's all it is.
Blake Griffin is a legit 6'10". He's a Skywalker who can average 30 on somebody else. And if he plays consistently like a superstar, what I'm saying to you is this. It could, because now at playoff time, the game slows down. They can slow it down against you because that's your only hope. They can pull it off, but they won't.
You might not even be able to leave your center on late in the fourth quarter.
I agree with that, but what I'm saying to you is that
it doesn't matter what Blake Griffin does.
But you're acting like Golden State is going to win because of its style. I'm saying it's a product of others not stepping up to the challenge and living up to their ability.
You can give them all step ladders. You can give them all ladders. There's no amount of stepping up that anyone on the Clippers can do. If everyone on the Clippers steps up and is the best version of themselves, they lose to the Warriors. I don't know if it goes 7 games.
The Clippers have talent comparable to Cleveland. The Clippers have talent comparable. Yes, they do.
No.
They have talent comparable to San Antonio. The difference is those dudes, particularly in Cleveland, step up. The Clippers haven't. That's the difference.
The difference is LeBron James.
Guys, we got to go to break. I know, you're so excited. A couple weeks away, the NBA season, these two so fired up. But meanwhile,
I can't wait.
I know. In the middle of the NFL, the Bengals are in danger of falling to 1-3 tonight against the Dolphins. So could this game be a must-win for Marvin Lewis? Don't miss that discussion when First Take returns.
You know the golden rule. Those who have the gold make the rules.
Hey, you're stupid.
And then celebrates when he does something good.
Come on!
I was being glib.
Ow!
But this guy's special.
Come on!
And then comes the cliff. Shh.
I barely understood what the hell you were saying. What are y'all going to lose this week?
So here is my lock. I am going with the Packers. They're going to redeem themselves at home against Detroit. And I will remain standing at the end of this.
Well, you may. I don't know. We'll see. I know I'll remain standing.
Over the Eagles?
That's right. The Eagles.
So risky.
The Eagles are mirage. Yes, they've been playing much better defense. I think Carson Wentz is the real deal. He's still a rookie. The Steelers' defense is much improved, and there's no way the Eagles are going to stop that Steelers' offense. Steelers are going to beat them on the road.
Well, like Max likes to say, kids, that's a wrap. It's over, and
what
it's
trenchant
only
analysis
week 4.
by me.
You are eliminated.
Well, at least it was a nail biter. At least it was a close game. No?
I'm glad America knows who to stick with. If you're making picks, come to this girl. I got you covered.
Whatever.
Can we redo the contest? Do you guys want to play again so I can beat you again? It's only week 4. This is embarrassing.
I think you should start over again.
You don't know the half of it.
Did it to me. The Los Angeles Rams beat
Of course
Seattle.
they did.
Right.
I try to warn these people.
Come on. After losing 28-0 the first go round. I mean, what do you want me to say?
I'll let you guys back in. Let's let them back in the pool and do it again.
That's even worse.
And here's the deal. Like the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season are really an extension of the preseason anyhow. So you know what? Your expert analysis didn't quite work out because you didn't have enough information yet.
Too small sample size.
Right.
Oh,
so now
but I was
you know what the worst part of that is? Molly warns me off the pick.
I did.
She's like, I'm trying to help you.
I look out for him. Let me just leave it with this.
Yes.
Who picked the Broncos to win the Super Bowl? This was before your time. Who picked the Cavs? Okay, let's move on.
Wow.
We have another one to pick. We will leave it there. We've got Thursday Night Football, gentlemen. Mark, always good to see you here.
This is an outrage.
Featuring the Dolphins and the Bengals. You spend some time in Miami as you star on the show Ballers.
Yes.
The Bengals are struggling this season at just 1-2 so far, with their only win coming in Week 1 over the Jets, a 1-point victory. Cincinnati head coach Marvin Lewis coming under a little scrutiny over the past few seasons, because he struggled a little bit there, as we know, getting into the first round of the playoffs each of the last 5 seasons, not making it further. Mark, I want to start with you. If the Bengals lose tonight, could this affect the future of Marvin Lewis in Cincy?
Well, I mean, I always think you're always coaching for your job, and obviously they've had a great run there, albeit not being able to get out of the playoffs. But yeah, I think certainly as you start compiling kind of the body of work, and it's been very good, but again, it's winning the big games. It's winning the big moments. It's winning in the playoffs. Last week, they had a huge game against the defending world champions at home as they opened up their home opener, and they can't get that done. So Thursday night, primetime game against the Miami Dolphins, a team at home that you should be able to beat. Yeah, I think if you don't win this game, at least, the very least, the rumblings will start. You'll start hearing all those people talking, is Marvin Lewis the right guy? I think he is, but still, the proof is in the pudding. You've got to win these games. He hasn't been able to do it.
Stop right there. Mark Schlereth, I need you to explain to me, why do you think Marvin Lewis is the right guy for the job when he has been on the job for 12 complete seasons and has not won one single playoff game?
Yeah.
I need an explanation.
Well, I mean, I think their teams have competed well. I think they've played well up until those playoff games. It comes down to he hasn't been able to get his team to play at the level they need to play at in those games. So you know what? I mean, if you want to...
Ain't that what a head coach is supposed to do?
Yeah, it is what a head coach is supposed to do. You're 100% right. And that's why the talk will start. That's why the scrutiny will start. I don't think there's any question that he will be scrutinized. He'll be looked at. And if it doesn't happen again this year, but we've been waiting for 6-7 years. So they seem to be in Cincinnati to be okay with that.
Look,
maybe that's the goal.
I hate to say it, but I think it does fall on Marvin Lewis, and I think it will affect his future tonight. First, let me say, you know, you got a guy like Schottenheimer, and in every era, you seem to have a head coach like, they just don't do well in the playoffs. But with Schottenheimer, I never got the feeling that he was a bad coach in the playoffs or his teams weren't prepared. I thought he got unlucky a lot of the time. You know, it's like a coin flip, some close games. But I don't get that feeling with Marvin Lewis. I have to admit, I feel like the team is fundamentally different once they enter the playoffs and during the regular season. I was really interested in seeing them play in the playoffs last year because I felt like Andy Dalton in particular had turned a corner, not only playing at a very high level, maybe the highest level he ever played on in the regular season, but I started noticing primetime games, even if it was a Thursday night game, he would tick up instead of down. Fourth quarters, he would tick up instead of down. What is this going to look like in the play? And then he gets hurt. It just may not be like meant to be with Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati. And I think if you lose to a team you're supposed to win against at home, to go 1-3 in a division where, I mean, you just might not make the playoffs, period. Right. That would be the excuse that they need to move on from Marvin Lewis. Look, now they didn't even make the playoffs. We're going in the wrong direction. And at that point, you have the moment you need to say, okay, the peg you need to say, okay, time for a change at the head coach.
The history would say in the playoffs, in the big kind of primetime games, that's where there has been a lack of production with a Marvin Lewis coached football team in Cincinnati. And again, I could make a compelling argument over the last few years. Now, they lost a lot of guys to free agency. They've lost some guys along the way. But over the last few years, I would make a very compelling argument that they're the most talented team in football, both offensively and defensively. And you still can't find a way to get it done. Now, last year, obviously, you lose your quarterback. That makes it very tough on you. But I have to see them perform in prime time and have one of those dominant performances. And if this happens again, or if, like you said, they don't go to the playoffs, yeah, I think the writing is on the wall.
Let me say this. I think Cincinnati should win this game tonight. They're at home. You got Jeremy Hill to run the football. This is the 31st ranked team against the run, the Miami Dolphins. You can run on them. They're giving up over 4.5 yards a carry or something like that. I mean, it's just embarrassing right now what their run defense looks like. And Ndamukong Suh looked awful in the first 3 games last year. This year, he's considerably better in terms of putting his hands on the quarterback, tackles, et cetera, et cetera. But I have some serious questions about this offense. Do you know their leading rusher on the Miami Dolphins has 54 yards rushing? You know who that leader rusher is? Ryan Tannehill. I mean, you got to be kidding me. You really got to be kidding me. I'm like,
Who's their leading passer?
Again,
It might not be Tannehill.
You're wrong for that.
Supposedly, it's him. He's got 4 interceptions already. He's been sacked 6 times in 3 games. Not awful, but you got to protect him a little bit more. But I'm looking at a passing game. You got Jarvis Landry, you got Devontae Parker, you got Kenny Stills. I mean, these guys can catch the football for you. You can't run and you can't defend the run. And if you can't do
defend
those,
the pass either.
if you can't do those 2 things, then you should not be able to beat Cincinnati on the road. Cincinnati loses tonight's game. It's not going to make much of a difference to me because I think Marvin Lewis has been in the playoffs 5 consecutive years. I think that it could potentially be in jeopardy. But I have had a hard time figuring out why he has kept his job this long, because progress is what life is supposed to be all about. And that has not been the case with the Marvin Lewis era in recent memory. And I think he's been given too many passes, and he should have been. I'm not saying he can't coach. I'm saying he don't need to coach there. At some point in time, you've been in one destination for but so long, and you continue to disappoint year after year after year. The time for change has arrived.
A.J. Green has a big game tonight.
You're calling that?
Yep.
Okay. Hey, if you ever want to do
Is that kind of like Philadelphia can't shut down the offense?
you got him.
Touche, Mark Schlereth.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Hey, Mark, if you ever want to do an Eliminator challenge next year, just let me know, because I'd like some real competition. Maybe we could keep going.
That'd be great. We could probably play beyond 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'd love it.
That'd be great.
She sits up there and she smiles and she listens to us and it goes like this. Well, I'm going to go the other way. Luck's up, right, and now she's a prophet.
The worst part for me is also like,
you imitated me.
or another bad part. They're all worst parts. We had the same picks the first 2 weeks, and the first time we deviated,
and then you fell off. Stick
got
with
crushed.
me. I'm good karma, kid. Coming up next on the show, Mark, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to talk who has the bigger weekend in college football, Jackson or Watson. Twitter results are in. We'll break it down next.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. And in part by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Tonight, it's Game 2 of the World Cup of Hockey Finals. Team Europe facing Team Canada. That is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN2. And a little baseball. The race for October continues today on ESPN when the Indians travel to Detroit and face the Tigers. That one at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN.
Oh, it's great how the Yankees spoiled the Red Sox clinching last night.
All right, stay focused, people. We asked you all at home to vote on Twitter. Who will have the better game this Saturday? Deshaun Watson, who Stephen A. went with, or Lamar Jackson, who Max Kellerman went with. Here are the results. 76% say Jackson.
Well, they're looking at, they have eyeballs. They're watching the games. And Lamar Jackson is completely unstoppable so far, in spite of playing Florida State. And he's hanging 60 points plus just about 59 points, the lowest total this last week, on every single team. I mean, it is what it is, 25 touchdowns.
There's 2 reasons for this. Number one, they are going by the eyeball test. He'll always win that. We understand that. But then you also have the thing with Lamar Jackson.
You know,
you always got
to think it was a good feature.
Not just though it is, but then you got Lamar Jackson. But then you also have the fact that Deshaun Watson really has not come out and lived up to expectations. But our audience isn't used to prophesizing. They leave that to me. That's what I'm going to do for them in this weekend.
Oh, he's such a little sweetheart. I can't wait for this game. We'll be discussing it on Monday Reacting. Please stay tuned, folks.
Remember, you agreed with me, but go ahead.
Best athletic event, best sporting event of the weekend.
He came on the show. I'm a fan.
Louisville and Clemson.
You know what? You know Mama Watson loves me.
We do. I was just going to mention
Mama Watson, what's going on? How you doing?
Anything, Mama Jackson? Anything?
No. She doesn't know you yet. You're getting there.
All right.
Miss Jackson, you're nasty. All right, check this video out. Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson showing off at practice yesterday. Anthony Slater, the Bay Area News Group, took a video of the 2 sharpshooters, and they didn't miss a shot for 75 seconds until finally Katie snapped the streak at the very end Ridiculous.
Let me tell you the most illmatic thing about this whole situation, Molly,
illmatic.
Stephen A.
Yeah.
Here it is. Those aren't the two best shooters on the team.
Right.
The best shooter on the
True
team
story.
isn't even participating in that. And for over a minute, both guys hitting every shot. That's the second and third best shooter on the team.
You see why I'm disgusted?
I know.
See why I'm disgusted?
I know, because you're sad for the season.
Just ruin November through April. That's what I'm saying.
The UConn Huskies. Pay attention to college.
No, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The second best player on the planet
never know what could
joins the
happen.
73.
So if the Knicks are playing the Bulls, you watching?
No.
You're not watching the Knicks and the
watching
Bulls?
those
Are you
games.
interested in the games?
Yeah. Second consolation prize.
If the Clippers are playing the Thunder, are you interested in that game?
You care about second and third.
That's what I'm saying. I got to care about second
They
and
might
third
get a
place
ribbon
now.
or something.
That's what I gotta do.
Participation
That's
ribbon.
what I got to do.
San Antonio and Cleveland are hooking up. You want to see that?
Hoping that somebody will be interested enough. And by the way, y'all don't have to travel for the games. I got to go watch these massacres.
You like traveling. You love
I
basketball.
got to go watch these
You
massacres.
love watching it.
Man, please. Don't get me started. I'll be leaving a lot of games early, catching red eyes. I'm telling you that
This
right
is
now.
your passion. This
You're
is
going to
your
get
heart.
to see one of the greatest teams ever assembled in action.
Here's the
You don't want to look at
Here's
that?
the difference. Max is going to be at the Oracle like this. And I'm going to be like this.
You're right. That's right. That's right. I'll be at some
all-star
games.
game.
But listen.
There's no other speaker.
And I pay my own way to these games sometimes.
We have a Ritter. I get to see all the staff at the Oracle. I love all of those folks that work for the Warriors in that arena. They're great people. That's about it.
No, we have a minute left. Seriously, there's no other teams you're excited about? Come on.
No,
You're
I'm
Mr.
excited about
Basketball.
various. No, I'm excited about. I love the game of basketball, and I'm excited about watching a whole bunch of teams.
Minnesota's going to take a step forward.
I'm just talking about when it goes
They've got
against
gold
Golden
medals.
State. That's what I'm talking about.
So you didn't like Mike Tyson in his prime?
Boxing's different.
If you see, you didn't like the greatest show on turf when they were tearing up the league.
You don't waste time. Like, for example, I love watching horse racing. I love to watch the 2 minutes. I don't want to see all the pregame festivities leading up, pre-stuff festivities leading up to it.
I like watching the 98 Yankees. I love watching dominance.
You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make to you is that, look, it's horse racing, the basketball, boxing, yes. But basketball is 82 games. 82 games, 48 minutes. Mike Tyson went in there and knocked you out in 91 seconds. I can live with that.
This is amazing because in the end, we know what we're getting. We're getting Cleveland and Golden State in a rubber match.
Man, I'm just
saying. This is one of the all-time great seasons we're about to see.
But this time I'll take your money, but I can't because this is my profession.
You're crying. You're laughing so hard.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, what you want me to say? It hurts.